So I'm sitting here a day after Boxing Day, in the middle of the night, just in a bit of downtime over the Christmas period, working on my Solaris mod, which if you haven't heard of, I'm adding a ton of Guild Wars 2 races, like Coden and Skrit and Ogres and whatnot, as spacefaring civilizations in a grand strategy 4X hybrid game by Paradox, you guys might know about. I did a stream on it a while ago. So anyway, in this mod, I'm looking a lot at lore, and for the diplomacy on the mod, I'm basically lifting interesting quotes from Guild Wars 1 and 2 that belong to the various races and repurposing them as diplomacy in the mods. So when you play the mods, sometimes the races will speak to you in familiar ways you might recognize from the games as like bits of trivia. Anyway, all of this is to say that I'm looking at some weird obscure lore about the Marganites right now on the Guild Wars 1 wiki, and I came across this page here. So what this is an article dedicated to the idea of Nightfall, the prophecy. So Guild Wars 1 wiki has 3 different pages for Nightfall. It's got a page for the idea of Nightfall as a product, the campaign Nightfall, what year it released in, how much it sold for, what the collector's edition was like and all that. It's got a page for the idea of Nightfall as an event in lore and what actually happened in the story around this thing, Nightfall. But then it has this page here, which I've never been to or wasn't really familiar with. And it's the idea of Nightfall as a prophecy. So we know that Nightfall was a prophecy, really, in universe. People like Spear Marshal Cormier and General Morgan and stuff, they talked about Nightfall, and the idea of Nightfall was known. And there's a wiki page specifically about that as an in-universe prophecy. And I've never read this passage of text before. It's very old, and you'll see from the top of the wiki page, it says this article is derived from the property of ArenaNet or NCSoft and used with permission on the wiki. So they basically pulled this verbatim from somewhere, and I don't know where. Maybe it's listed in the Nightfall manuscripts. That wouldn't surprise me too much. At the bottom of the wiki page, it explicitly says it's a lore document. So it's like, the history of the Shining Blade you can see there. It's like an empire divided. It's like the movement of the world. It's an official written piece. And so I want to do a video talking about it because not only is it really well written, not only is it new to me, despite being a pretty old part of this franchise, but also it touches on something that disappointed me in Path of Fire and I now realize shouldn't have. And I found this all interesting enough, I wanted to talk to you about it. So check it out. This is what it says. Like the golden sun, the gods watch over Alona, but in the shadows, enemies of the heavens hide from ceaseless scrutiny. Outside the world we know, malefic forces watch and wait, scheming of ways to manifest in the realm of flesh. Their methods range from the subtle to the shocking, whispers in the minds of the troubled, plagues creeping across the corrupted countryside, innocents transformed into ravenous abominations and stranger creations. Civilizations arise to defend humanity against this evil, but sometimes civilization fails. Now Alona is troubled by kindred horrors. Civilized lands recognize and revere 5 gods, but heretics speak of a fallen god. 1,000 years ago, these heretics' spiritual ancestors, the Marganites, fought an epic battle on the shallow sea north of Alona. The carnage that resulted created a vast wasteland, the realm now known as the Crystal Desert. Empowered by the blessings of their dark deity, the Marganites waged war against the followers of all other gods, smashing temples, desecrating shrines, and butchering all rivals. Despite the power granted by horrific transformations, their army was annihilated, their false god exiled to a realm of torment. Now, heretics see signs that their fallen god may be at work in the world again. His name has been eradicated from all history, banished from all monuments, condemned as blasphemy. Yet still, the servants of the unholy watch and wait. With sharpened blades and practiced spells, his followers await the return of their forgotten and forsaken deity. Fervently, they believe that he will return, just as night follows day. Working the will of a patient and potent force of evil in the world, they await the onset of Nightfall. All right, so I mean, how cool is that? You can really get a sense of what's so beautiful about the tone of some of the Guild Wars 1 campaigns, particularly Nightfall. This feels very, even if you look at Guild Wars 2 launch with how dark the idea of going to Or was and the undead Elder Dragon, nothing gets quite as evocative and beautiful, I think, and dark and scary as a lot of the material they wrote about Nightfall. So anyway, I think that's a really cool passage that's new to me. I got very excited reading it and kind of just wanted to share it with the internet. Maybe it is in the manuscripts and I just haven't read them for long enough. The other reason I really wanted to share this was because it's actually confirmation of something that I've had wrong for many years, and I wanted to talk about. It's slipped into a lot of my videos, so really long-term fans of mine might have some thoughts on this. Let's look at this middle passage, where they say that the carnage that resulted created a vast wasteland, the realm now known as the Crystal Desert. So, that line there confirms, even before Nightfall came out, that in lore, the devs kind of believed the Crystal Desert was created from the force of the battle. The carnage that resulted created the vast wasteland. That's actually a well-known fact. Well, not necessarily well-known, but that's an established fact predating even Nightfall itself. And so why this is relevant for Path of Fire is because I didn't really know about this piece of information. Over the years before Path of Fire came out, we did a lot of speculation about the Crystal Desert becoming an ocean. And one of the really cool ideas that we'd always talked about was that the reason the ocean dried up and became a desert was because Abaddon was the god of water. That was like his domain. And so when he's banished and imprisoned in this other realm, this other reality, aspects of his dominion recede. And so if he's the god of water and now he's banished, how can he influence Tyria's waters now? And maybe the only reason it was the Crystal Sea in the first place was because Abaddon willed it to be so, and he could because that was like his domain, right? So he's banished, and now whatever good he did for that region of the world in making it watery goes away and it dries up. And I liked that idea that the god of water is destroyed, and all of a sudden an area that had lots of water in it is also now destroyed. And perhaps not by coincidence, the Marganites, his most fervent followers, were the people that sailed and lived there, and they kind of lose their home too as they're banished too. That was all really beautiful, and we talked about that for years, and I still really like that idea. Then Path of Fire came along, and instead went with a very different answer. Path of Fire came along and just said, oh yeah, it was just the fight between the gods and stuff. It dried up all the water, and then they kind of left it there, which to me wasn't so poetic and encouraging and enticing. And so when Path of Fire came out and revealed that fact, I was critical of it. I said, oh man, all these years, and now they reveal it was just because of the fighting. All these years, and that's their answer. Their answer's nowhere near as cool as what we'd been imagining for all this time, blah, 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 blah. Well, now I sit here after Boxing Day, and I realize that actually in this, in my opinion, obscure text from way before even Nightfall, it had already been established that it was the carnage of the battle that created the vast wasteland. And what Path of Fire was doing was it wasn't actually expanding the horizons of our lore understanding at all. It was just reiterating what had been stated oh so long ago, and was probably always consistent on their internal wikis. And so, yeah, I felt the need to point that out. Because, I think that's actually to the devs' credit that they've been so consistent with it for so long. And, that's just my bad for not knowing every little facet of the world building, I guess. But anyway, I thought it was fun, a weird little insight, so I thought I'd throw a video up. Hope you guys are having a nice Christmas. I'll see you later.